we have to put that name since it is located in China. Actually, from the ancient replicas of the Buddhist culture, you can find a lot of exchanges in the Chinese culture and the Western culture. And later there is the big disaster that has buried and destroyed the Kizil murals, and also a large part of them have been brought to the Western countries. So today you can find those murals and some other replicas in the Western museums. And today we have brought back the pictures of those replicas with high resolution. And for those objects and images restored in the Western countries, we bring it here to the exhibition with the images and pictures. And we are also restoring the old image of this history by the digital technology, and we have invited the director to be our guide during the exhibition. So you could tell us the symbols of the culture reflecting the Western and China cultural exchanges, the art exchanges, and also you could share with us the knowledge about the restoration of the historical objects. Good morning to you all. I'm the director. My name is Miao Li Hui. I'm from the Kuzhi Research Institute of Xinjiang. And for Lanzhou City is an important point for the Belt and Road, especially for the ancient Silk Road. And for Lanzhou City, according to its history, and talking about the richness of the history, it's a relatively young city compared to the other ancient cities. For the Gansu province, there was the Western River Corridor and also the 4 counties along the river towards the western side of the river. And for Kuzhi, since the Han Dynasty, it existed in the history and it has a long existence. And for Kuzhi and the whole western region, after the integration into the Chinese map, it's to the western side of the river, and until now, we have carried out a lot of studies in the Kuzhi Research Institute. And there have been a lot of scholars and experts. And also there have been proofs from history that there have been a lot of exchanges in history between China and the Western countries. And the past directors of the Institute have said that in order to unveil the mystery of the western region of China, you have to go back to the origin of the Kuzhi kingdom. And for the Kizil Grotto, it's far more ancient than the Dunhuang Grotto, because it's the 3rd century before Christ. Because for Dunhuang Grotto, we have not yet achieved a consensus on the exact time. So that's the 4th century BC. for the construction time and also for the geographic location, the Kizil Grotto is the oldest in the time of construction and is located to the most western point of China. And the Culture Research Institute is similar to that Institute of Dunhuang Studies. And by the beginning of the establishment of this institute in 1985, it has become an important institute for the studies of all those relics in the region. However, the value of the Kizil murals and the culture is widely recognized. First of all, we have the Kizil Grottoes, and we have another site of grottos. It has a very high value in culture and is widely recognized. But we have to wait until 1985 to have this official research institute of Xinjiang. And its function is similar to that Institute of Dunhuang, so it's designated to the studies and protection of these grottos and also the relics. Before entering into the hall, I think it would be a glamorous environment with a steady, tidy distribution of the pictures. However, those are not rectangular pictures as we have imagined, and it's very thick. It looks like a real one. So actually we could tell the heaviness from the history and also the incomplete beauty of the replics. Yes, I agree with what you have said. Now we call them artistic works. However, in ancient times, that is not its purpose. Actually, it's a way to serve the believers of a religion as kind of the note or the reminder for their religion. Back to the old days, the original look of those murals, they are more beautiful than these ones because now you can see that some of the parts are lost and they also lost the colors and also the paintings. So we have to do the restoration to represent the old look. Because for those parts that is lost, there should be the gold color or even the gold leaves. We have to admire the beauty of present, but we should also be able to imagine how glamorous it was in history, and also from that picture we can imagine to what extent that the Buddhism has developed in this part of China. And I'd like to add one more point, why it is in this kind of design and why the curator of the exhibition has made this decision. Actually, from these relics, you can tell a sad history of the Kucha kingdom. In the past, it's a very complete side of the murals, but now it's separated into different parts. And by a complete mural, you cannot tell all that meaningful senses behind it. Back to my childhood, I read a lot of books to explorers of the foreign countries. When they come to the place, they have used a special tool to get those murals. For different countries, they use different methods. What you have talked about. The Americans, they used a sticky cloth. to get that surface full of paintings. But here in this part, the technologies are not yet that developed. As you can see for the murals, there is one technique. On the surface of the rock, you have to do a basement, and then you put the gray ashes, and then you start to paint. For the US explorers, they will cut until that part of the basement. So I may understand it in this way. In northwestern part of China, it's like we are constructing a house. We first have a basement, and then we add the clay or even the stores of the wheat so that it becomes more solid. And finally, we get another layer of the gray ashes. So for the explorers, when they want to bring away these murals, they will cut until that basement surface. In the very beginning, all those layers on the surface are for the protection of the heat. But later on, we start to do the paintings. And if you detach all that surface, you can get the whole paintings. And for the German people, they also cut piece by piece, right? Yes, exactly. So today what we can see is part by part. So during that transportation from China back to Germany, the parts have also been destroyed to some extent. When you are visiting their museum to see our murals, what is your feeling? I was very angry, especially when I was young during the visit. Now we go to visit the museum. We have to accept the status quo. However, we have to do our best to get the imaging of those replics and also the pictures. The people we are dealing with are not the people who have stolen those pictures and murals. The Germans today are not those who have stolen our relics from the past. So we have to have a good mindset towards them. We should not be angry towards today's scholars in Germany. And the management system in Germany is also interesting. They are hiring the managers across the whole world. A lot of managers and experts working for those German museums, they are not German nationals. And they are thinking about what is the best way to conserve those relics and what is the best way to share this beauty of history with everyone. So they are not that narrow-minded. We will leave the history to one side and we are focused on the work that we could do in the moment now. And I have a personal consideration. At the beginning of the 20th century, they stole the grottos away, they stole all the pictures away. But today, when we go to their site to have the high-resolution pictures, sometimes we have the difficulty. For different organizations and for different people, they hold different opinions and positions. For some of them, they are very pleased to give us the right to take pictures, and for some others, they are more reluctant to do so. What is about the status quo? And for this program, we started it by 1998. A lot of senior experts, they are joined by the young scholars to start this work. And there is a museum on Indian culture in Germany. They have organized an international conference, and people get to know that there is this program on the Kizil murals. And there is a way to restore all the murals and to bring the completeness back to these relics. People have also expressed their will to start a cooperation. There's one senior expert and also another Chinese expert. They work together. We go to the storage site. They are not narrow-minded. They are very open to this collaboration. They let us take the photos. And for the second phase, which is after 2011, we have received the financial support from the National Fund, and our institute has also given us a lot of help. For the German side, they have also met some difficulties during the collaboration. The whole process is so complicated. There is the conflict of interest among the different institutes. Along the collaboration, they have the doubts whether we will take these objects away, since we have the property right in the ancient times. They have this doubt and even the worry. But if you show them what is our real purpose, they would be more willing to let us collaborate and also let us take pictures or do anything. Today, when we are doing this exhibition, we have to get the authority from the museum. So whether we are doing this exhibition for free or it's a charged one, it's a paid one, everything should be under discussion with the German side. So we will feel the sadness by doing that. Actually, I have a very complicated sensation in that case. Today we are living in this world, we have to be rational. Because you are doing this exchange with a foreign friend and you are representing the China's image. Even though I have some feelings about that, I cannot say it out directly because we still have to work with the foreigners in the future. Now we are working mostly with the Germans and also the Russians. The Germans have cut most of the murals, and during the Second World War, after the explosion of the murals, museums and the Russians have come with a Red Army, and then they brought away those relics. They have taken nearly half of the pictures. So today when we are going to their country to take the pictures, we don't know which one belongs to which part. We don't know its original position. What we can see is that there is one piece lost, there is one piece missing, but we cannot tell which one is that. But from the picture, you can know rapidly from the report that which is the part missing, and you can know exactly to which position we should restore it. And those are very precious materials. In the past, when you didn't have those pictures of high resolution, you cannot see the exact positions of those pictures. Today, after having those pictures, we will do some more work to restore to its original look. For some pictures, it's much easier for us to restore it to its original position, as what we can see in this exhibition. So that is an effort for more than 20 years. From 1998 to 2018, that's 20 years already. And we are bringing it back with this unique form. As to the content of those pictures, the murals have survived the traces of history after hundreds or even thousands of years. Now the colors are not so vivid. However, that is not true for all of them. For some relics, the colors are still very vivid and they are very bright. So that is due to the utilization of the mineral colorants. Some of them have used the minerals to do the paintings, and some others use the vegetation. And when you are using the minerals, the colors could be conserved after thousands of years. We will crush those minerals into the powder, and then we use a glutant to mix them. As long as the mineral is not separated with the glutinous material, and the color could be conserved after so many years. The mineral itself comes from the growth of the stones after thousands of years. That's why it could sustain this long development of history. And in the Dunhuang Grotto of Mogao, we have seen the 4 colors extracted from the replics: the blue, the brown, the black, and the red. And those are the symbolic colors of the grottos. And for the Kizil murals, do they have symbolic colors just as we could find from the Dunhuang murals? Let me put it in this way. The representative colors is blue, and this is not an ordinary color. It comes from a stone, which is lapis, and according to the expert, the lapis is originated from Afghanistan. We have a very limited amount of output of lapis, and you can only find several sources of the lapis. And some scholars, they are even saying that there is a road of lapis for the transportation and trade of lapis. Back to the old days, some minerals, they are used to make the copper, and this is a copper oxide. The color comes from the copper oxide. So the color is also vivid, this green color. As you have mentioned before, a lot of the minerals, they are imported from the other countries, and some others can be found locally. For example, the lapis from Afghanistan is a very expensive material. So my impression is that first of all, you have to have a road to transport all those materials from foreign countries to China. And to make all the Kizil Grottoes, it's very costly. You spend a fortune on that. For the construction of the grottos, if you make it in modern days, you have the large machines to do that, but in old days, you have to use the human labor to accomplish all that. And for the paintings, you cannot finish it overnight. So from those paintings, you can tell that back to the old days, there are a lot of experts and also the painters who are capable of doing that. And for the making of the murals, we have those programs for the study of them. For example, for one single grotto of a surface of 100 square meters, if you bring dozens of scholars and they do this painting every day, and they do this only as work, it takes them still 3 to 4 months to accomplish all the paintings and murals inside one grotto. And these are the relics left down by the history, and it's very costly. For some parts of it, it's coated with the gold leaves. For example, on the bodies of the Buddhas, so it costs a fortune. According to the financial sources, some kings have supported it, and some other believers, the ordinary people, they have also contributed their part to support the construction of the grottos. As you mentioned, the ordinary people or the king, they have contributed their labor or the money to construct this grotto. And this proves that Buddhism has recognized a mainstream development along the ancient Silk Road. And there are also a lot of monks, including the famous Kumarajiva. He's born in the Kulture Kingdom. For this monk, Kumarajiva, in my personal view, when you look at the development of Buddhism in the Eastern Asia, he has contributed a lot. We even consider that the monk Kumarajiva has contributed a larger part than Xuanzang, which is another monk. If you want to develop a religion, you want to grow the number of the believers. And if you want to let more people know the Buddhism, then you have to have a means to separate or to distribute the sutras of the Buddhism. Today in Dunhuang Grottoes, you have the grottoes to conserve the sutras of Buddhism. And Kumarajiva has translated a lot of sutras with the help of the others. Actually, in old times, we have a lot of people translating the Kumarajiva, but only the versions translated by Kumarajiva have sustained until today and widely used by today. There's for the original version of the Indian people, they have a different thinking pattern than the Chinese people. If you translate word to word from the Indian language to the Chinese language, then the sutra cannot be so widely accepted by the Chinese people. But Kumarajiva has made a very good adaptation of those sutra to the Chinese culture. That is why so many people like it, and it has been universalized in the Chinese land. Until the Tang Dynasty, the Buddhist culture has recognized a very fast development, and the center of the Buddhist development has been shifted from India to China. Just now we have also talked about the paintings of the murals. For the content of the murals, you can find the echoes of the exchanges in the cultural side. For example, for the positions of the personnels and also some colors in the patterns. Could you please give us an example? For this one, this is from the grotto, and these smaller ones have been brought to Germany. This is the status quo. You only have the main feature here, and to its side, it's restored one. This is the actual one, and that is the restored one with the pictures collected from the other countries. It is not the most symbolic one, however, we still could find some traces from the comparison. You can compare their faces. For example, that is a typical face of the people living in Kucha Kingdom. They have a very wide forehead and a very short jaw. You can look at their face. The jaw is very short and very wide. You can tell that they are different from the Han people. When you are transmitting the culture and when you are building up these murals, you can always find the traces and proofs for the adaptation. If you want to show to the local people, the religious persons, then you have to use the look of the local people in those statues and also in the pictures. That is an adaptation, and that is also a way to make people believe in this religion, because people will feel more comfortable and familiar to those religious persons. For the left picture, it's a restored one, but there are still empty places here, so those are the pictures still missing. From the traces of the cut, is it a one? No, that is a natural trace. Maybe during the cut, the limits, the boundaries have already been destroyed. When you do the painting, you have to follow that rectangular form, but when you cut, you may have a deviation. For the German authority, they published a number of 300 and more murals carried back from China. However, according to our number, it should be more than 400. So where are those 100 pictures missing? Where are they? Maybe during the cut or during the transportation, they are destroyed, or it may also due to the error of the recording or in the registration system of the German. And today we are bringing back those high-resolution pictures. During 20 years of efforts, we moved slowly ahead, and it's no easy job. We have to make a lot of studies in order to determine which is its place. Or approximately that is the place, and we have to see whether it should be moved up or down a little bit by some inches. The composition of the personnels, you could only know the correct compositions of those personnels with already the knowledge base. You have to consider its relations to the main feature and the match of the color. If you don't know enough knowledge about that, you cannot tell simply which is the position of this part of the picture. After the entrance into the Research Institute of Kucha, you have studied a lot in order to have the basic knowledge. Otherwise, you cannot do the job. To put two pictures together, it's relatively easy if you can find the match of their limits. However, when the limits are destroyed, how you could determine that it belongs to this position instead of another? In that case, you have to use your knowledge to help you. And during the cut or during the transportation, there may be some detachment of the colors. After falling down, these parts still exist. Could we still find them? When it's broken, we will not keep them. So, when we are taking a picture, what is the smallest part? It's like our palm, the size of our palm. But for those smaller parts, we should also be serious in putting them back to the murals. During the preliminary work in Kucha, after the cutting, if there are some detachments, they will just leave it there. They will not take it because it's so small. But today, when we are doing the management and restoration, we will not leave aside any part of the murals, even though it is very small. And for the left picture, you can find some linear traces. The traces come from the days of the construction of the grottoes. Some of them may come from the cuts, but most of them come from the carvings of those grottoes during the construction days. These kind of traces may come from the cuts. But for the rest, for the majority of it, it comes from the construction. And you could tell that actually people are carving very carefully, and they are progressing very slowly when they are constructing the grotto. For the Kucha and Lowland, those are the lost kingdoms. So what is our consideration of its role in the historical development? Today, when we talk about the ancient Silk Road, we have different explanations. For the definition, there are many. For the simplest version, it comes from Xi'an, and then it passes through the Hexi corridor, and then by the Xinjiang Autonomous Region, it goes out of China. But for the starting point, some scholars hold different opinions. Because when we go back to the old days, it's not only Chang'an. that we carry out the goods and we do trade. We can even extend it to other countries, for example, Japan. And we also have the grassland Silk Road. For the ancient road we talk, today it's in a narrow sense, but we still have some other ancient Silk Road passing by the Inner Mongolia Autonomous Region, and then it goes to the Xinjiang Autonomous Region. And from the basin of Talimu, there is another ancient Silk Road. Before the Han Dynasty and the Tang Dynasty, that is the mainstream path. There are two branches to go into the Xinjiang Autonomous Region. One is in the north and another is in the south. And for the northern part, it would pass by the Kucha region, Kucha Kingdom. In Xinjiang Autonomous Region, there are two corridors, each one to one side of the Tian Shan Mountain. And there is a pathway connecting the north and south of Xinjiang Autonomous Region, and that will also travel by the Kucha Kingdom. And finally, it will go back to the eastern part. And for the Kucha Kingdom and for the Xinjiang Autonomous Region, they have their own features. For example, their agriculture is dependent on oasis, and most of the river in the oasis comes from the Tian Shan Mountain. The water comes from the melted snow from the mountain, and two streams of those rivers will pass by the Kucha. In the ancient times, we call them Xichuan water. And we find, too, a very large surface of the plain, and that is rarely seen in the Xinjiang Autonomous Region. And with that plain, we have the enabling conditions to do agriculture. For the Kucha, in ancient times, it's the place in the whole autonomous region of Xinjiang that has the fastest and largest size of economic growth, and also a well-developed trade. It's the local center of the region. And for agriculture, they also need the seeds and also the machineries for the plantation. In that case, they have to carry out the exchanges with the outside world. So during that commercial exchange, there is the propelling effect to the cultural development. For today's exhibition, we have the pictures, but we also have the real-size cave replicas. For those two caves, what is your standard in the selection? For example, this one, why you choose this one? First of all, it's complete and it's very well conserved. And then the size is rational. If you do the replica in real size with a very big cave, then you cannot put it into the museum. This is a rectangular cave. It's in a rectangular form. And then inside, people can admire the murals inside the grottos. It's just like in the Dunhuang grottos. And those murals have been very well conserved. For example, here you can see the colors used. If you have visited the real one, you will find this replica is just as the real one. The colors are very vivid. If you go to the real one, you can see the colors are as vivid as this one. And here there's the reminder for our visitors. When you go to the real grotto, you cannot use the flash, and you cannot talk loudly, and you cannot have this heavy lighting, because all those elements, including the sound, the carbon dioxide, and the flash, will destroy the pictures on the wall. When you go to visit the grottos, you have to be very quiet, and you should show your respect to the relics, and you can never touch it. And that is a reminder for our visitors. And as a civilized visitor, those are the rules follow. Today we don't have many people touching the murals, but still we have some. And the fingers would destroy the replicas directly. And this is another real-size replica of the cave. It's bigger than the previous one. And the structure is more complicated. We have two branches inside. We have first of this main site and the main feature, and then you have two separated ones. When you are facing this part, it looks like a pillar. Actually, it's a symbol of the pagoda. The original form is in a pagoda, and pagoda is the symbol of the Renaissance of the Buddha. Here you can see the images of the Buddha. When you put the two symbols together, it's a place for people to say their prayers. As you can see that this is a place for religious ceremonies, and here there should be the barriers to protect the central table, and on the table there will be flowers and food and also the incense to honor the Buddha. And in ancient times, people are so familiar with the story told by those murals. Only by a small hint, you can know what is the story told in this grotto. You should turn from the right to the left. It's a clockwise. It's the clockwise. When you go clockwise around the pillar, it's a way to honor the Buddha. Here, the look of the Buddha is a symbol of the suture and also the Buddhism. Here you can also see the paintings of the pagoda, an indication of the Buddhism. And to our right-hand side, and here is the nirvana of the Buddha. And nirvana of the Buddha is different from the death of an ordinary people. For those believers, after the death of the person, there is something that will sustain, and that is the essence of the world. That is something will not disappear. And according to the religious suture, we should get out of this circle of the essence. And for the ordinary people, because they have done something bad, they cannot get out of this circle of the experience. They have a lot of ambitions and desires, so they have so much difficulty in getting out of this circle. And for the Buddhism, they encourage people to abandon their desires and ambitions so that they can get out of this cycle and they can get their final nirvana. For the ordinary people, they are heavily influenced by this story, and then they contribute their fortune or their labor to the construction of the grotto. Along the ancient Silk Road, you can find a lot of similar grottos from a realistic point of view. That is for a spiritual purpose that we have constructed so many grottos. And we have contributed a lot of social fortunes and personal fortunes to the construction. And that is purely due to our belief. Otherwise, who would spend so much money in constructing so many grottos? Those are standing Buddha statues. So let's have a look at this one. The supporters from the royal family. And they have been stolen away by the German people. Those are the supporters from the old days. They are from the royal family. In ancient times, in a lot of places, the royal family is superior to all the other people in the country. You can see that there is a circle around their head. According to the Buddhism, only people who are Buddhas and also the gods in the sky can have that circle. But here, for the royal family members, each of them have a circle around their head. So they are considered as close to the gods and Buddhas. Those are all royal family members. So they can have a circle, and for the ordinary people, they cannot have one. If they have one, then it's considered that they have broken the rules of the society, of the hierarchy. And from their clothing, you can also tell their social status. So in one of the fairy tale, there's a person now wearing the similar clothes. From the clothing, you can already tell the differences among the personnels, and it's passed from one generation to another. And this is a mural coming from the 6th century BC. Some of the traditions have been carried on from one generation to another, but some others are lost. For the clothing, those are very heavy robes. But today, for the people living in the Xinjiang Autonomous Region, clothing has become thinner. But the style is very similar to the old one. But still, we are wondering whether it is passed by the previous generation. Because in Xinjiang Autonomous Region, it's very cold in winter, so if you put on this heavy clothes, this robe, it would be very practical. So we don't know whether it's passed from the previous generations or it's just an adaptation to the local weather conditions. You don't have the chain of the proofs to show that today's wearing of the people come from directly the past generations. And we come back to those distributed pictures of the relics, and we have a very complicated feeling in front of that. Today we are using the technologies such as the imagings and the high-resolution photos or even artificial intelligence to represent the old glory to the people of today. We have a lot of choices as the technical support. For the Kizil murals, is everything digitalized? Because for the murals, as time passes by, finally the colors will become less vivid. Are you doing the digitalization of the murals? Yes. Talking about the conservation of the murals. In the past, the government has attached great importance to the protection of the Kizil murals. After the foundation of the Kucha Research Institute, we have dispatched the important scholars to do the conservation work. After the establishment of our research institute, we are under the direction of the Department of Culture. We have a professional directors to help us with our work. For the conservation of the grottoes, in the preliminary stage is the protection of the stones, the protection of the stock. Because the stocks and the stones, they are the basis for everything else, for the grottoes, for the construction, for the murals, etc. So for those 4 autonomous regions, we have 300 grottoes in dangerous conditions, and that needs the restoration. We started by them. And then after the consolidation of the structure with the stocks and also with the stones, we move inside the grottoes. For those murals and for the paintings that are in the risk of falling down, we do the restoration. That is the phase 2. And now we are in the phase number 3 for the protection of the paintings. We are restoring them with the chemical techniques. We should have a consideration of the future development. We want to have a process that is reversible. You have mentioned one method, but what we are doing now is actually a preventive way, a preventive work. Before a problem occurs, we should already start the conservation. For example, the digitalization. What we want to protect is the completeness of the information, so we can have an extraction of the information. All those relics, they are like an old man. You cannot stop the decay of this old man. You cannot stop the degradation of all the murals and grottoes, but you can keep the information with you after the digitalization. Today, the decay of those murals are due to the human elements and also the natural elements. Before getting to the point of degradation, we should stop it and use another way to have the information well kept. The government has also given us support since the last decade. For example, the programs have received the financial support and other exploration work. Today we have not yet covered all the grottos, but we have finished with more than 10 of them. Under the continuous support of the government, we will carry on with the restoration work. Thank you, Mr. Director. Today's exhibition shows us the broken looks of those murals inside the Kizil Grottoes and also the paintings lost overseas. From the content of those murals, we can reveal the old glory of the Kucha kingdom and also the cultural exchanges between the kingdom and the outside world. And from those broken paintings, we can understand what they have lived by the end of the 19th century and the beginning of the 20th century. After that disaster, we have contributed a lot of efforts in order to restore those paintings and murals. And people working in this area, they have been working relentlessly. This is the spirit of the ancient Silk Road. And by this exhibition, we hope that more people would get interested in the conservation of the historical objects and the relics. And thank you, Mr. Director, for your guide. And we hope that people will pay more attention to those Chinese historical objects distributed across the world, lost overseas, and we hope that you would be proud about our own culture. And that is all for today's live stream program. And this is presented by our 3 journalists from CCTV, and thank you for staying with us.